Hello, welcome to the very first episode of our Rutland podinar series. This follows on from the popular webinar series we've done throughout 2021. Many if you remember the subjects from the building safety bill through to the smoke control webinar. And we're calling this a podinar. It's a slightly more relaxed version of a webinar, a little more interactive, where we hope to address some of the common issues, common problems and questions coming from fire door manufacturers, fire door specifiers and fire door installers and wider. So we've already had a handful of questions coming from the webinars as a result of those series. And I think we want to start an open an ongoing discussion around issues that affect life safety when it comes to fire doors. My name's Neil Smith. I'm the Technical and Compliance Director at Rutland. Today we've chosen the question that came to us on, are nominal fire doors effective? So we've the privilege of having some two highly experienced fire door professionals. We've fire door compliance consultants, very own Danny White, and with Neil Ashdown of Fire Doors Complete Limited. So a very warm welcome to you both.
Thank you, Neil.
Good morning. Thanks, Neil.
Good morning, both. Thank you for giving up your valuable time assessing fire doors and training people in fire door safety. So we've also on the panel Rhonda Hughes of Rutland. Good morning, Rhonda.
Morning. Thanks everyone for joining. It's good to be on.
Great. We gave you a little bit of homework, Rhonda.
That's right.
Researched something about fire door history. What have you got to share with us?
Yeah, sure, Neil. Thanks for that. Takes me back to my school days. Not very long away. So yeah, I did a bit of research on the history of fire safety. Now, what I found out was 1951 was the first standards, were the first standards introduced for fire doors. Now, it wasn't until 1953, however, that the first fire testing for fire doors started.
Interesting.
It's quite interesting, yeah. And then between 1953 and 2000, that's when the BS legislations were introduced. That stands for British Standards, which there was a lot. There was about 22 different, it kept being amended, etc. And then in 2000, that's when we adopted the EU legislation that ran alongside the British standard. So that meant that both European and British were acceptable in the UK fire door market. Now, another interesting thing, that's particularly fire door history. However, fire safety as a whole started a long time before that, about the 19th century, after some quite major fire disasters, in particularly in theatres, etc. So they kept bringing out new fire safety. Now, one in particular incident that stood out to me was at the Empire Palace Theatre, I believe, in Edinburgh in 1911. And they managed to evacuate 2,000 attendees in a short space of time. I think it was 2.5 minutes, which is quite incredible for 1911 standard. And one of the things that really intrigued me was that the band at the theatre actually played the national anthem throughout the whole evacuation process.
Oh, how patriotic.
Yeah, I don't think you can get much patriotic than that. So
no.
They then used that model, the speed of that evacuation in their next legislations that they brought out. They used that as a model because it's extremely fast space of time. So yeah, that's just a few bits and facts that I found out. Trust they've interested you all. Thanks,
yeah,
Neil. I'm back.
No, it's a lot of people in 2 minutes.
Yeah,
So
2,000.
Yeah,
Quite
amazing.
incredible.
And music with it. So
Yeah.
a very special thanks to those that have joined this podinar. It is a very important topic we're going to discuss today, and we thought it would be beneficial to share as much expertise as we can with you on this subject. Just to go through how this is going to run then. So we'll have we'll hear from our specialists, and then at the bottom of the chat you can actually ask questions. You can remain anonymous if desired, but please do fire in questions as they come to you. And also we may get time for a poll at the end. So getting onto our question today: are nominal fire doors effective? I just want to, when we spoke earlier in the week, guys, you were telling me some initial responses. Can you share those again, Danny?
Yeah, I think, and I always look at this as, where is the answer to the question? And I think the answer is not really hidden, but it's in the first two letters of nominal and or notional. So are they effective? We look at the first two letters. What do we get? N-O.
Very interesting.
The baseline where I come from. And the way I like to think about it is that I always wanted to be a professional footballer. Tried my best, didn't quite make it. But what I now try and do is I put on my AFC Wimbledon top, and again, try and become a professional footballer. And people say, you're too old. And I say, fair enough. You know, you've got the right kit, but it doesn't make you a professional footballer.
Yeah, so you look the part. I look the part,
but I just can't perform.
Very good analogy.
Makes it simple, doesn't it?
We like simple.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, so there may be maybe loads of doors out there that look the part then. Neil, what would you say on this?
I like what Danny said there. Look the part. So yeah, they look like a fire door, and they have the attributes of a fire door. Haven't got the kit. So they've got the kit, haven't got the professional status, I suppose.
Yeah.
But, so there's no certification or evidence of performance with a nominal fire door. A notional fire door is different. A notional fire door, and this is supported by government guidance. So bear with me while I read it, because I might get it wrong if I don't. So I've written it down.
You go for it.
So yeah, a nominal fire door is a timber-based fire door that, in the opinion of the fire door inspector, can provide fire resistance performance for a specified period of time. That's a nominal fire door. I've been guilty of getting the two mixed up, quite frankly.
Same
less so these days. Yeah, don't we all? But a notional fire door is a fire door that satisfies the standard applicable to fire resisting doors at the time the building was constructed. So going back to Rhonda's excellent lecture earlier on, 1953 was the first fire performance test for a fire door, something part 1, BS 476 part 1, I think it might have been called. In 1972, we had BS 476 part 8, and now since 1987, 35 years ago, we have BS 476 part 22. So the problem with all of this is, when you're faced with a 30 or 35 or 40-year-old fire door, how do you know whether that was made to be a fire door? How do you know whether it was tested to part 8 or part 22? The answer is that the person doing the inspection has to be very careful to do all they can to find out what the provenance of that door is. So don't inspect a door in isolation. Have a look at all the doors installed around that time in that building until you find one that looks like all the others, but has some sort of identification to it. It might even be a stencil mark on the door indicating the manufacturer or the brand of the door.
Just some little.
You might find a door with the FS stands for initial on the top edge of the door, and that could indicate it's a fire door.
Yeah.
So the problem is that I think what's happening, which is quite dangerous, is that there are inspectors out there calling fire doors nominal fire doors, when if they'd taken more time, they may have been able to find out the provenance of that door and say, hold on a minute, this door has evidence of performance. It's intended to be a fire door.
So you're saying that if they do find evidence of performance or some little clue to traceability, it could be a notional fire door?
Yes.
Or have I got that muddled up?
It can be a notional fire door because if it was tested before the current test, i.e. 1987, then that would mean it's a notional fire door. Tested maybe in 1974 to part 8 of BS 476, but importantly, still a fire door.
And compliant at the time the building was built.
Quite. Now, with a nominal fire door, sometimes people think, it might not be a fire door at all, because there's nothing indicating it as a fire door, i.e. no plug, no label, no paperwork. So that's when you dig deeper to try and find something on the door that can trace back to it being a fire door made by a fire door manufacturer.
It's almost like
I think there's, I was going to say, I think Neil's spot on there. But one thing which is always neglected, and it sometimes becomes infuriating, that people don't bother to check the installation, they just look at the door. So they don't remove the architrave. So you may come across this door, it's the best performing door in the history of mankind, but because it's been installed properly, i.e. there's no fire stopping between the frame and the brickwork, it's just not going to perform as what it should be. So again, when people are going out there should be some sort of recognition to remove the architrave to see how it was installed, because I've come across numerous examples where you go along, you remove the architrave and there's absolutely nothing there. Or there was one we did, and I could tell you the exact date it was installed because it was fire stopped with the Sun newspaper. So again, it's not just looking at the door, it's looking at the whole installation as well.
There was one the other day I heard of where there was a whole aerosol, an empty aerosol can of fire foam used in the gap filling, and they'd run out of foam and then put the can in the gap. So it's all part of that detective work. It's almost like Sherlock Holmes, I was going to say, like drilling down into the building and what is behind everything, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the starting point, that establish, if we can, what the door is, but then also establish if it's been done properly. And then that will give you a basis to make a decision on. But as Neil said, don't do it in isolation. Have a look at numerous doors, because again, even when I go into new build properties at the moment, some of them got the BW certifier label on them, others haven't got the BW certifier label on them. They're all identical, and just because the label has been removed, does that really mean it isn't from the same manufacturing source as the ones which do have it? So again, we do have to be careful.
Yeah, and would you also be looking for evidence of maintenance when you're doing these checks?
Yeah, can I take that one?
Yeah,
go for it.
Yeah, so definitely. A key part of the inspection is the condition of the door. And by inspecting the condition, that's clearly going to indicate what sort of maintenance has been happening to that fire door. Is it compliant? And there is government guidance now. Since Grenfell Tower, advice notes have been published by the government for the housing associations and housing providers. And it talks about making sure that such work is done by competent persons, the right persons. And that when replacement parts are sought, that it's really important that the part that was originally installed is replicated as the same part and not putting new parts into existing doors. For example, people may not know this, but if you replace just an intermediate strip from one edge of the door, it's important it matches the existing strips. So it's best practice to replace all three, the two sides and the top on the door leaf, and not just one.
Yeah,
That sort of thing, it's really important.
just drill into that a little. What's the significance of that, Neil? Having all the intermescent strips the same.
Okay. So the key thing, Neil, is that intermescent strips are generally made from two different materials. There's graphite and there's, I believe, sodium silicate. And the graphite and sodium silicate might start to expand at different temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
So always make sure all the strips are of the same type from the same manufacturer.
And different.
Even with graphite, there was an interesting thing put on social media a little while ago, and it did an experiment with some graphite seals, and even the graphite expanded to different sizes at the same temperature.
Because different pressures.
Different pressures, absolutely.
Yeah, some are high pressure and some are low pressure, and some intermescents can actually open a door. So it's a very important point you bring up.
Can I just add in one point there as well, Neil, that when we're talking about maintenance, we are talking about maintaining a door as you find it and using the correct documentation. Maintaining a door does not mean upgrading a door. Right. And I think that's fairly crucial when you're looking at fire door safety, because so many people think, okay, well, it's got no strips and seals in it, for example. If I just router into the head of the door, it will make it a fire rated door. Mm-hmm. If you go back to the thought process for that, firstly, you don't actually know what your starting point is. So you don't know whether it's an FD 10, 15, 20, whatever. Just by putting some intermescent seals in a door is not going to make it magically an FD30. Mm-hmm. But also you don't know the age of the door, you don't know the stability, the integrity of the door. So by cutting into it, you may actually weaken the door. So again, when we're talking about maintenance, it's specific that we maintain as found and not try and butcher the door.
Yeah, and if there's no traceability held by the property owner as to what the door is and how it was manufactured originally, it's very difficult to know what standard to maintain it to, if at all possible.
And if I can say, Neil, please, and a big issue is that there are so many notional, potentially nominal fire doors already out there. There are a lot of fire doors that are certificated or have evidence, but that's been removed from the edge of the door. So it's hard to tell if it was a fire door or not. It needs somebody experienced to make that decision. And also, don't forget, there's government guidance out there about notional fire doors in housing. And it talks about the sort of upgrading that Danny was just talking about there, adding intermescent letter plates, adding intermescent seals and smoke seals to the edge of the door, making sure the door closer will actually close the door. These are all things that are improvements to fire doors, but don't guarantee the ultimate performance of the fire door. And that's where the art of risk assessment comes in.
That's interesting, that specific guidance on that. Is that a link that you've got that we could share around?
Yeah, it's a well-known document. It's in Fire Safety and Purpose-Built Blocks of Flats, and that starts at 62.1. I'll get that right. Hold on. Hold the horses there 1 second. I've written it down for a good reason. It starts at 62.12 section in Fire Safety in Purpose-Built Blocks of Flats, a document no less written by the DCLG, as they were then, which would now be the MHCLG. Or maybe the Department for Levelling Up, I think they're called these days. It's hard to keep pace with all this.
Yeah. Anyone who's driving out there listening to this podinar, don't pull over into the lay-by to find a pen. We will send that 62.12 detail around, so don't get hung up on the detail. But thanks, Neil. Okay. I didn't realise you were such a fountain of wisdom. Is it right you've got a blog on this as well? Someone tipped me off this morning on this subject.
After Grenfell Tower, the very next day I had a call from a colleague in the industry, and something was on social media about fire doors, and somebody responded by saying, don't be silly, the Grenfell Tower was all about the spread of fire at the building, which of course it was, we all know that. But people in the industry probably thought to themselves, I bet there's a problem with the fire doors as well. And of course, it turned out there was, because It's just a known fact that those of us within the industry that go into the built environment and look at the doors know there are a lot of big issues with fire doors. And that's a real problem, not for us, it's a problem for the building owners.
Yeah.
What are they to do about it? You can't just go out tomorrow and either replace or repair every single fire door.
No.
This is where the art of the risk assessor comes in.
Okay, so we're talking proportionate risk here.
Absolutely, and that's where the guidance is important.
Yeah. So
I think it's also important to read the guidance properly, because when you're talking about low risk premises, i.e. a block of flats with 4 flats, 2 downstairs, 2 upstairs, there'll be different guidance on that as opposed to a 20-story high-rise block.
Yeah.
And it's important that you don't use your low-level guidance and apply it to your high-level guidance because you think it's cheaper. As Neil has said, it's all down to the proportionate risk, and the proportionate risk of a high-rise is, I would envisage, going to be more than a 4-flat block of flats.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it all comes down to, is there a bin store below the living areas and so on? There's so much to take into account.
Yeah, everything must be treated together as opposed to components in isolation. It's like doing a jigsaw puzzle. You need all the pieces of the puzzle to make it complete, and without various aspects of it, then you won't get the complete picture. And I think it's again looking at the fire risk assessments and getting competent people to do the fire risk assessments, and not doing the sort of, I can go this afternoon, pay £50 and become a fire risk assessor, therefore I'm cheap. And a lot of those ones will say refer to fire door specialist, refer to AOV specialist, refer to fire alarm specialist. So you're paying money, but you're not actually getting anything. It's better to pay some more money to make sure that the risk is proportionate to the building you're going into.
That's
and
very
then
good.
You can make decisions based on that.
Mm. Am I right, Danny, in thinking there's a serious amount of just the value of the fire doors? What would you say to encourage property owners to look at fire doors more seriously?
Well, this goes back to, and this is where the finance people will get involved and be horrified. That supposing we've got a new block of flats or an existing block of flats and we put a fire alarm system in them, it may cost £20,000-30,000 to put that in, but we regularly maintain it on a monthly basis. 1, 2, 3, 4. We just go through the whole process. So we're also at the same time we've put in 100 fire doors. So our asset for the fire doors is maybe £150,000. So our asset for the fire doors far outweighs the proportionality of the fire alarm system. But we forget about the fire doors and we don't bother to maintain those. And it's fundamental when you're looking at the reform order that these items of fire protection are regularly maintained to make sure that they work properly. And it's bizarre that people, or very few people, go down the route of undertaking regular maintenance checks to ensure that they comply, bearing in mind it's their sort of biggest expenditure potentially in the building.
Very good.
Can I just say, Neil, something, please? I think it might be important. There'll be a mix of audience here. There'll be people in the industry and there'll be others who are perhaps responsible persons at buildings. It's important to understand a couple more things. Nominal is not the same as notional, and also composite fire doors, which are quite popular, have been for 10, 20 years, cannot be either. A composite fire door can't be a nominal fire door. It has to have evidence of performance, and also it can't be a notional fire door for the same reason. And it's important that people that have fire doors and have a question mark over them do some research and don't rush headlong into a speedy replacement of the doors. There are instances where organisations finish up with inferior fire doors to the ones that were ripped out because not enough time and attention was paid to the preparation and specification.
That's really important. I had a very similar, just on the composite fire doors, there are a number of system houses that have done, some people I've been working with have done about over 30 or 40 bi-directional fire tests, and that's the way that they come to market. on the back of primary fire test evidence now. So we're not talking about new designed composite doors there, are we, Neil? We're talking about heritage stock that is in there, and we don't know what the composition of the doors are and the effectiveness. Is that right?
Yeah, older composite fire doors, there'll most likely be no evidence of performance held by the owner of the building.
Yeah.
Only recently, when I say recently, probably 3 years,
Yeah.
I've been inspecting new installations of composite doors. I've found the installers have not been aware of the requirement to pass on the evidence and data sheets to the end user.
Yeah, that golden thread of information.
Mm.
Yeah, it's very important, ties it all together. Well, we have got a Q&A session coming. We've maybe just got time now for a very brief poll. Get the audience involved. If you've got a laptop in front of you, we just put that poll up there. So those of you who haven't got a screen, it says, what's the definition of a nominal fire door? There's 3 choices there. A door without intermittent strips, smoke seals, or a timber-based fire door that, in the opinion of the fire door inspector, can provide fire resistance performance for a specified period of time, or a fire door that has satisfied the standard applicable to fire resisting doors at the time the building was constructed. Got the answers coming in there now. So 68%, it's very good, picked up that a timber-based fire door that, in the opinion of the fire door assessor, is compliant. Let's see. Is that correct? Correct answer?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Yep.
Look at that, we've got some good listeners today.
No, it's very good. So at this, we did say we'd be 29 minutes. We'll just go into a Q&A session. We may just have a little stretch leg for 2 minutes. That's okay. And please keep the questions coming through. We'll try and answer as many as we can. Right, we're back. Thank you. There's a lot of questions coming through. Thank you very much to all attending and for the interaction. So I think we'll start off with, so what are the panel's thoughts on applying paint finishes to a notional or nominal door to enhance its fire integrity performance? Do you take that one, Neil?
Oh, thank you. What a great first question. I can tell there's some people here today that are in the industry. Hi, guys. So paint to make it a fire door. I think if you're going to paint a fire door, or you put intumescent coating on it to make it a fire door, it's pretty much already going to be a fire door, because it's got to be solid to do that. You couldn't paint a hollow core 35mm hardboard or plywood faced honeycomb construction with a door with thin stiles and top and bottom rails and make it a fire door. But to be fair to manufacturers of that sort of upgrading product, evidence will be available. So if you need to do it, then make sure you've got the evidence and make sure you apply the paint in exact accordance with the instructions. But key thing, make sure that product has been tested successfully on the type of fire door or door you're going to paint it on.
Yeah. So you're not just making a non-fire door a fire door by painting with intumescent paint.
Neil, I don't believe in magic.
No.
Santa Claus, yes. Magic, no.
Goes back to Danny's point. I'd like to be, but I'm not.
Yes, that's my away kit.
Good. I hope that's answered that one. The second question we've got here. Once a flat entrance door falls outside of the defects period, typically 12 months, does ongoing repair stroke maintenance work need to be carried out by a UCAS accredited fire door team? So I think the point there is, does it have to be carried out by a UCAS approved repair team?
Do you want me to take that one, Neil?
Yep, be free, Danny. Thank you.
In an ideal world, we would say yes, because by having UCAS accreditation, it shows a level of competency against the people carrying out the works. But unfortunately, there is nothing in the regulations which state it must be carried out by third-party certified people covered under a UCAS scheme.
I see. So it's not mandatory?
No. There's very little in the fire door industry that is mandatory. For example, fire door installations by third-party certified personnel is not mandatory. And if it was, at least it would give fire door inspectors, maintainers more of a chance moving further forward. So I think fundamentally, if your doors haven't been installed by a third-party certified installer, as we mentioned earlier, the first thing you should do is taking off the architraves to ensure that it has been installed properly. If it hasn't, carry out the appropriate remedial works and then carry on the maintenance regime as it should have been, as it should be done, because you will have, or hopefully will have, the evidence for it. So no legal requirement, but it is deemed as best practice.
No, thank you, Danny.
Can I add something there, Neil?
Go for it.
Yeah, the government advice notes in Grenfell Tower do talk about third-party certification of products and services, and they say that using those certificated companies are a way of complying and verifying that the company is competent to do that sort of work, but not be solely relied upon.
Yeah, I think the thing I like about UCAS accredited companies is that you just know that they've been audited and are getting audited. Otherwise, they lose their UCAS accreditation. So yeah, thanks for that, both. Next up is question. You are saying replace like for like. What if the product was not correct in the first place?
Who's taking that one? Me?
You're welcome. You're welcome, Neil.
I always dive in for the difficult ones, don't I? Yeah, quite right. That's why you have a fire door inspector or a person inspecting fire doors that knows about fire doors. Because if it was wrong in the first place, we wouldn't want to perpetuate that. No. We would need to change it and make sure it's compliant from now on.
Yeah, so you'd condemn it and
replace it. Condemn. I don't like to use the word condemn. I like to use the word non-compliance.
That's
not
good.
My choice. I don't condemn things. Not my choice.
Yeah, it's good. Nice fella to have around. So we have another question here on. Sorry, this is not a question actually. It's an input from a chair of one of the associations on seals types. Ensuring the same seals are utilised in one door set. There is guidance on the IFSA website regarding the varying material types available. I think you were mentioning, Neil, to me that there are some very helpful papers written by the Intumescent Fire Seals Association.
That's right. At the IFSA website, there is a page, I think, called Documents, and there's some good stuff there.
Yeah, good. We'll share those around as well. Thank you for the participants' interaction and sharing knowledge. It's very, very much appreciated. It's all about maintaining and improving life safety. So we've got a note here, something to note, extract from Building Regs Part B. Small differences in detail, such as glazing apertures, intumescent strips, door frames, and ironmongery, etc., may significantly affect the rating. So that's a very key point there from Doc B. Just a question, question number 4. So what are your thoughts and are you concerned about the experience level competence of inspectors within the industry? Who
You want me
wants
to start off that one, Neil, and then you can take over?
Please,
You can
Danny.
have that one to yourself, Danny.
Very, very good question. I think what we need to look at, and it goes back to the competency of the person doing it. Now, you can go on a 2-day course and then call yourself an fire door inspector, but what does that actually mean? I could go on a fire risk assessment course this afternoon and pass it potentially, and then call myself a fire risk assessor, but I am not, because I have no experience in it. And I think it's more from a client perspective that what you're tending to find is that the less experienced people will go into a block and say, these doors aren't compliant because they haven't got any plugs, labels, or any visible evidence of it being a fire door. But as Neil pointed out, you can't do just a one-off. You need to have a look at a range of doors. And it's experienced people who will be able to determine potentially the types of joints, the types of frames, and bring the package together. So instead of just saying it's non-compliance because it hasn't got a plug or a label, you can say it's non-compliant because it's got 25 things wrong with it, or it is compliant, but it just needs a bit of TLC. So I think the experience is more to do with the long-term benefits of employing somebody who knows what they're talking about, because it can save organisations an absolute fortune in the long run.
Yeah, and to be able to spend that good money where it's needed.
Yeah.
Very good. Good answer. Thank you. Danny?
That's all right.
I think we've still got time. It's incredible the amount of response. So question, I have missed part of the detail. Where can I obtain information regarding nominal and notional fire doors? I'm assuming there are guidelines. So besides your blog on this, Neil, is there any further guidelines?
I would say if the questioner is in housing, have a look at the government advice notes just by typing in Google search fire door advice notes. You'll find the government websites that talk about that. It's really informative guidance, but targeted at housing, I must emphasise. And also the one I mentioned earlier was called Fire Safety in Purpose-Built Blocks of Flats.
Yeah.
As Danny pointed out earlier, it talks about the different risk factors depending on the type of flats, i.e. high rise, low rise, door opening to the outside, door open to the inside. Huge difference there, obviously. And it talks about notional fire doors, what they are, and what upgrading one might do.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's a good answer for Keith there. Hope that answers your question, Keith, but we will send round all these links. Question here from Paul. What is a notional fire door? Could you just, I think we have gone over this, but just very sort of in 5 words, or a compressed overview of what a notional fire door is.
I have it written down. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
It says here, a fire door that satisfied the standard applicable to fire resisting doors at the time the building was constructed.
Thank you. There you go, Paul. We'll go a few more. Kenneth asks, discuss importance of fire door asset registers linked with FRA. I think you've spoken a bit about assets, Danny.
I think one of the things, especially with larger organisations, they don't know exactly how many fire doors they have in situation. And I think one of the issues has been also that many years ago, I think it was after Lakenhall House, there was a lack of signage on fire doors. So people just went round and put a fire door keep shut sign on every single door they found, which sort of somewhat defeats the purpose because it leaves you in a false sense of security. So what you should be looking at doing is employing a proper fire risk assessor in conjunction with the fire door specialist. So the fire risk assessor can go out, do the fire risk assessment, work out which of the building critical doors, advise on the fire rating and everything like that. So the fire door inspector can then say X, Y, and Z to overcome the particular issues. But again, it's important to have a register there for your own budgetary purposes as well.
Yeah.
So if I've got 1,000 fire doors, which I know I have to put a budget aside to maintain those fire doors.
Yeah.
If I don't know how many fire doors, how am I going to budget for it?
Yeah.
So by having the two tied up, I think it's very, very important.
Yeah, and budgeting for their replacement. So if they've been supplied under a 5-year guarantee, for example, the lifetime of that product, you need to be building in a kind of an ongoing budget ready for replacement. Would you say?
I think you need to go back to a lot of local authorities and housing associations. What they do is their sort of 30-year life cycle.
Yeah.
So even though that you have doors out there with a 10-year warranty, the better ones hopefully will last a lot longer than the 10 years.
Yeah.
So as long as you maintain them and keep them up to scratch, there isn't a reason why they'll last a hell of a lot longer than the 10 years, as long as they were fit for purpose at the time. So again, it comes back to protecting your investment by maintaining them and inspecting them regularly.
That's good. Very good point. So to have a register is critical. We've got a lot of more questions coming in. I think if we just have this last one from Matthew, and then we will answer the others in further communications. But Matthew is asking, if a firewall is rated 90 minutes, integrity and insulation, so 90 minutes, why doesn't the performance of the door set within the wall not match its terms for time and insulation performance? Neil, could you take that?
Yeah, happy to. The answer is it can and sometimes does. In industry, there is a requirement for life safety in terms of what happens in a fire, but also integrity and protection for the building and the assets contained within it.
Yes.
So timber fire doors are available right up to FD 120. There'll be more limitations on them in terms of size and what hardware is required, such as latches to hold the door in a vertical plane in a fire for longer, more easily. But of course, in a block of flats scenario, it could be a blockwork wall. So that wall might be far in excess of the 30 minutes that building regulations require. But the fact is, there are regulations. 30 minutes is what they require. So the door is required to be a 30-minute fire door with smoke protection.
Yeah. And you can get situations like underground driveways, roadways from one hospital building to another, where you might get a requirement for 240 minutes or 480 with using steel fire doors. And a lot of that is to protect assets, as you say, not so much for protecting life at that stage. So you don't want the foundations of the hospital to start collapsing. So yeah, it was important to, that's helpful. Do you have any more to say on that, Danny?
No, I think I call it the 50-50 rule as a minimum, that even though you may have a 90-minute wall, building regulations, if you're looking at flame entry doors, require for 30 minutes, so it's going to take 30 minutes to get out of your door, 30 minutes to get into the next door, so it's your 60, so there's your 60 minutes protection.
Yeah.
Excuse me, the wall's 90 minutes, so you've got an extra 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's good. Well, we can't go on all day, and we value all of the participants' time and the panelists. I just want to thank you all for joining today. You do definitely look well, Neil and Danny, since we last met.
Thank you.
Look like you both had a haircut.
Well, I'm going down to Wimbledon later on this afternoon to see if they'll take me as a proper footballer.
You never know. You never know.
You never know.
It worked for Vinnie Jones.
Yeah, we watched with great interest Danny.
I shall keep you updated. If I'm on match the day this Saturday, you know I've achieved something.
All the best.
All the best.
And yeah, thank you. And we will send this round as a recording. It will be available on our website in the events section as part of the Podinar series. Please keep the questions coming, and it will certainly be for open discussion. So yeah, thank you again, and goodbye. Enjoy your day.